Some say that we might be trying to take the easy way out. I say we're trying to take the realistic way out. It's got to be realistic at this point in our lives. It's
And I'm
got to
like,
fit.
and why not? I mean, the easy way out to me is I think I think I've earned a stress-free life at this point. It's not like
Absolutely.
I'm taking the easy way out, but it's like, tomorrow is not promised. And it's just like, if I can envision this life that for me feels like it would be stress-free, I could enjoy someone, I'm okay with that.
Welcome to Get Real with Alexis Jones. On this podcast, we'll dive into real relationships with real people guided by the wisdom and perspective of some of the most seasoned voices in our community, our beloved seniors. Each week, we'll unpack the joys, challenges, and lessons learned about love, family, friendship, and everything in between. This is a space for heartfelt conversations, eye-opening truths, and powerful stories that will inspire and challenge the way you think about relationships. We're keeping it honest, unfiltered, and deeply meaningful. So settle in and let's get ready to get real. Let's jump in.
I am so excited about this episode of Get Real with Alexis. I have my good friend, Dr. Kimberly Redding with me, and I am so excited. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Redding is a graduate of Morehouse College, Morehouse School of Medicine. She completed her residency training in anatomic and clinical pathology and a fellowship in gynecologic pathology at Emory School of Medicine. She completed a second residency in preventive medicine at the Morehouse School of Medicine and received a Master of Public Health in Health Policy from the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University. Dr. Redding is an associate professor in the Department of Anatomy, Pathology, and Medical Education and the director of the Office of Student Learning and Educational Resources at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, where we are today. Hotlanta. Dr. Redding is a member of several volunteer and service organizations, including the Links Incorporated and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We are sorors. Yay!
Yay!
She is a member of Green Forest Community Baptist Church in Decatur, Georgia, where she serves as an usher. She is the mother of a beautiful daughter, Erica Redding, and I have met her. She is absolutely gorgeous. And a son in law, Christelle Kimini. Welcome, my dear friend and sister, Dr. Kimberly Redding. Hey, Kim.
Hey, Alexis, thank you for having
All
me.
right, Kim. We're going to get right into it.
Okay.
I want to provide a little context for our audience tonight. So let's see, how should I start? I was in Rochester. I'm going to get a short version of the story. I was in Rochester visiting my brother. We were watching this reality show, Later Daters, and he had some really interesting comments. This is a reality show where seniors are dating and finding love and marriage and all that good stuff. So he had some interesting comments. So I had a discussion with him, which I've recorded. So if you want to go back and listen to my interview with my brother, Dr. James Cooper, go ahead and do that. But what I asked him was something, Kim, that you and I talked about when we were having lunch one day at Plates. Plates is a Black owned restaurant in Decatur, Georgia. We were just sitting there talking, and somehow we got on the topic of relationships. Is that right?
That is correct.
I don't know how that happened, but we started talking about relationships. So how did we get started with that? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think we were just kind of talking about, I think we were talking about the different phases of our lives and how you are in different places at different points. And so I am newly divorced after having been married for most of my adult life. And so I think we were talking about, and I remember you had shared with me that, you had dated and kind of your experiences dating. And I think we just started talking about you know, kind of how I felt in terms of this is the first time in many,
Yes.
many years, like really my adult life that I've lived by myself and how I'm starting to get used to that and embrace that. But yet,
Hmm.
and still talking about, yeah, but it would still be nice to have someone to do things with. But then we
Yes.
started kind of defining what we thought that would look like or what we would want, because then we started talking about, at this point in our life, would you want to get remarried, would you want to be with someone all the time, and then we just
And
started.
I remember when we got to this point in the conversation, talking about marriage was like, I don't know. I just don't know. And one of the reasons is been there, done that. I'm divorced as well. I have been married 3 times. Three. And the thought of possibly getting married again is like, oh my goodness. After 3 failures, how can I even consider? Now I've grown, but I still don't know if that's the thing I need to be thinking about. But we were talking about this in the restaurant, and I think we started talking about how, if we did it, how would that look like? How can we make that doable, right?
Yeah, I think it was like thinking at this point in our lives, what would the perfect marriage or relationship look like? And you having been married several times and me having been married once, but literally my entire adult life since I was 24 years old. Just kind of like you, been there, done that. I really you know, want the companionship, but not necessarily everything else that goes with being married. And so we were just kind of
Yeah.
talking about like, it's not that you're just married, it's like everything else that goes with it. And just feeling like at this point in my life, I don't know if I want that. The other thing is, we live in the same condominium building. And so we were
Yes.
both just like how we love our space. It's like you come home and
Absolutely.
it's exactly like you want it. It looks like it's decorated like you want. And the thought of, wow, just think if you're married, you got to share that space with someone else. And so I was
Oh,
just,
yes. I
yeah,
remember saying, I don't want to move over. I have no place to move my stuff. I don't know if I want to share my closet. I was like, I'm settled. How am I going to do that? The thought of that was like stressful.
and it was
How
kind of
do
like,
we do that?
well, where is somebody else going to put their stuff? Because
Right.
I'm like, my condo is packed to the brim, not a
Yes.
space in the closet, not an empty drawer. And so it was kind of like, I don't know that I want to give up any of my space. And so we just kind of were like, where we want companionship, because we both say, it'd be nice to have somebody to go to dinner with, go to
Yes.
movies, do things with, but I don't want to have to be obligated to live with this person 24/7 and have them around and share my space. And I mean, just all that goes with being married, that just felt really heavy and exhausting. And so I think we just kind of talked about what the ideal situation or relationship
Yeah.
would look like.
The if we could reimagine. First, let
Yeah.
me go back one step. We talked about sharing our current space, and we are in a condominium building with limited space. So it really is not realistic. But the other alternative is packing my stuff and move. See, look at that look on your face. The
No.
thought of packing my stuff and moving out into someone's home, it's like, oh, mm-mm, I can't do that either. So what's there's no solution for me. There's no solution until we kind of bandied it around about. And then what did we conclude, Dr. Reddy?
Well, I think we concluded that for me, the perfect relationship, and I think you were like, yeah, that would work. And I've had this conversation with other women, single women our age that have been married and divorced. For me, it would be for me to be able to have my space and my companion to have his space. And so that we don't even have to try and coexist in one space. He ain't got to move. I don't have to move. We can just enjoy being with each other. And then it's like, we can go out, we can enjoy ourselves. And then at the end of the day, see you later, And so, kind of this maintaining our own space. And I think, like for me, the issue is there really a man that would agree to that? Because then we also said that we felt that men sometimes are more I think wedded to the idea of coexisting and all than maybe women are. And so for me it was like, could we really find a man who would be comfortable in that kind of relationship, that
Yeah, I
got
have
his
no
place.
idea, but I want to come back to this first. So here's what happened. So we had this conversation, and when we concluded that maybe this could work if we both stayed in our separate homes.
Right.
I think I personally think that sounds exciting to me.
That sounds
It's like
perfect.
dating. It's like
I mean,
dating.
yes, because it's like it would always be fresh and new, and you would always, be excited to see each other, and we even said, I was like, he could come over, he could spend a night or two, but that's about it. And then after that, you go home. More than 2 nights is starting to get a little too much, because I'm probably ready for him to go home and I'm gonna need my space. And then, you go home, and then we look forward to the next opportunity to spend time together. And so to
Yeah.
me, that just seemed like it would always be fresh and
That's
new
what it
and
sounded like to
looking
me. I
forward to
cooked.
being
Come on
together.
over. I cooked dinner
Yeah.
tonight. Or how about I go over there, go over to your place and cook?
Yeah. Or I
Let's watch a
actually,
movie here. No, let's
and I need
watch a
somebody
movie
who likes
there.
to cook too, because I don't always want to have to be the one cooking. So I
Oh
would
my goodness.
appreciate
That's the
somebody
truth.
that likes to cook too, and sometimes would invite me over to eat. So
Right.
to me, that's what I would to me would be the perfect relationship at this point in my life, because I, like you,
Well,
just can't imagine
yeah,
moving out to someone else, and they're just moving in is not an option, moving in with me, because there literally is no place
there's
for
no
someone
place.
else
There's
to
no
fit.
space. And moving out sounds stressful to me,
It
just
really
too
does.
stressful. And we are seniors. We are at this point in our lives. I mean, I wouldn't have even considered this 30 years ago, 20s and 30s. But now I think seniors have to look at things in a more realistic way. We'll get back to that, but this is what was interesting to me. After we had this discussion, because we talked about it all the way back to our building, and we were in the elevator thinking, yes, we have the answer. Let's just do this. Well, then I didn't know this, that Cheryl Lee Ralph had a video about this topic that had gone viral. I had no idea. I want to play that now.
That she and her husband are good. She did. Let me tell you something about Miss Cheryl Lee Ralph. So Cheryl and her husband, Vincent Hughes, they've been married for 20 years, but they live 2,400 miles apart. Now, yes, he lives in Philly, where he serves as a state senator. He's doing his service. She lives in Hollywood, and she's an Emmy Award-winning actress. And Cheryl Lee Ralph sat down with People.com, and she explained how it works for them. Take a look.
He has his own real career. I have my own real career. He has his light to stand in. I have my light to stand in. So he is not looking at me, thinking about status or this or that. He's doing his thing. I get to do my thing. We also live in separate places. When I go to see him, love to see him. When it's time to leave, bye-bye, see you soon. I'm telling you, life is good.
Okay.
I didn't know about this video. Had you seen that?
I had never seen it before. I didn't know, that that's what her relationship was until you shared that with me and said, that you had seen that. And it was kind of like, we're not the only ones that feel
Yeah,
this
I mean,
way.
I'm thinking this is a novel idea, at
Yeah.
least for most of us. But it was like, well, and then she said they've been married for 20 years, I believe. They've
Now,
been married for
see,
20 years. And
that,
she was in some other interviews because everybody's excited. She's been interviewing with everybody, and so all these questions have come up. So I want to ask you something so I shared this with my son. How old is Brandon? He is 43. So we were together last weekend and I told him about all of this. And I asked him, well, what do you think about it? And he's 43, so that's a perspective he's coming from. He said, well, what do you do if you have an argument? He said, because if you have an argument, you just go to your separate homes and you can stay there for a year. You have no reason to come back together to try to work through that and reconcile because he's got a home and you've got a home. So what about that, Mom? What do you say to that, Kim?
I think, you know, I think part of, his response, like you said, is he's coming from a 40-year-old, which to me at this point in my life seems very young. But I think that it's that in order to be in that kind of a relationship, then there has to be mutually agreed on rules of engagement, and so I think that would be kind of something that, because I think it takes a certain level of maturity, a
Mm-hmm.
certain level of trust. I think there are a lot of things that have to be in place in order for
Yeah,
a relationship like that to work. And so I think
yeah.
kind of the rules of engagement, which would be like, if we disagree, we have to talk about it. I got to know how you're feeling. You got to know how I'm feeling. And I think part of it would be we don't walk away from that. Or even if, because sometimes you do need some time to cool off. And I think it's a perfect thing that, okay, I'm going to go here, you're going to go there. But part of our understanding is, but we got to come back and deal with this, because
I
I
like
think,
that.
yeah, that for me, I was in a relationship. I think part of what didn't work for me in my marriage is that I had a partner where we didn't talk about these things. Like when we got angry, we wouldn't speak, we'd go our separate ways, and then we just kind of act like it never happened. And so those are the kinds of things that just, build up under the surface and erode a relationship. So I don't think that living in the same house is necessarily the perfect solution either. I think you can live in the same house and still not be open and communicate and talk and resolve issues. Because I was in that kind of a marriage and a situation which was really difficult. So I don't think that, that living separately means you don't talk. And maybe because that's the kind of relationship you have, you actually talk and share more.
Yeah,
So that's
I
a
like that. That you make a good point. The problem is not the proximity. The problem is, can we communicate? Will
right.
we commit to communicating and working things through?
And will we commit to listening to one another? Will we commit
Absolutely.
to owning the part that we play in
Mm-hmm.
any disagreement or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you from experience, if you have a partner who's not willing to do that, you can live in the same house for 20, 30, 40 years and not have good communication and not have, a mutually beneficial relationship. So again, it's not about proximity, it's about, the communication and being able to do that and feel in a safe space and still
Yeah.
feel, loved and cared for in spite of the fact that we may not always agree. And so I think those are the things that are most important.
I didn't listen to a lot of the interviews that Shirley Ralph did, but I listened to a couple of them because I was trying to get different perspectives. Because what seems like an ideal situation for us, um, I know she was on the Breakfast Club, so Ti is on the Breakfast Club, and he was saying she wasn't there, but they were talking about it as we are, and he said, no, I can't do that. I want my wife right there with me every night. And then I was listening to Sherry Shepherd talk about it, and she was basically saying the same thing. Now, both of them are not in our age category. So I would really be interested to see what would a more mature man think about this arrangement. Maybe that should be my next conversation, is it to include, because my brother, he can't really relate. He's been married for over 30 years, and he's about 13 years younger than I am. But a mature man who's lived his life, experienced things, been married, and or not, and we'll reach this point, this chapter in our lives. I'm just wondering, would they be open? And if not, why not?
I don't know. I think I think it takes I don't think every man would be open, and I think even not every mature man would be open. And I think some of it is kind of our ideas around what marriage looks like, what a relationship looks like. I think, for some people, there may be issues of trust. Well, how do I know what you're doing? And then I think,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't mean um, to categorize men or to just, make blanket statements, but I think that that a lot of men want to be taken care of. They want that wife, that person there. And you have to be a pretty self-sufficient, independent man in order to be comfortable living so much of your life by yourself, without a wife there. So
Hmm.
I don't know that there are a lot of men. I may be wrong and I may be surprised, and people may hear this podcast and say you're wrong, or we may hear other people talking about these relationships. I have a really good friend of mine, um, and she told me that she knows someone, like she lives that lives in her city, and so she said that they have a similar relationship. I don't know if they're married, but they've been in a long-term relationship, and they live in the same building, and they each bought a separate condo in that
Oh.
building. And so they're in a building, but she's got her condo, he's got his condo. And that was when I was like, well, there are other people that feel that way. But I'd be really interested to know a man's perspective and different men's perspective,
I think
about.
you're right. I think that's the next conversation. I'd really be interested in knowing that. But here's the thing. The reality is this. We're laughing about it and all of that, and it's an interesting perspective, really interesting. And it sounds doable to me. But here's the thing. We are in a chapter of our lives where our needs are different. And so I think one of the things I heard um, Shirley Ralph say on another interview, she made this point about you have to be realistic about where you are in your life. And for example, if she is in California, she's in Hollywood, if she's there and her children are there, then she doesn't want to uproot and move away from her family. So I know that's a big thing for us. For example, if I met someone and they didn't live in Atlanta, it would be very difficult for me to move away from my children and grandchildren. I just don't want to do that. I would be
Right.
an unhappy camper.
Right.
And so there's some realistic things that I think you can sit down and talk about and then come up with, well, how can we do this that would work out for you and for me? If you could have that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that you'd have to be able, first of all, I think that it would take a certain man, a certain person that would be comfortable in that kind of relationship. And then I think there are conversations around the financial aspects of a relationship like
Oh
that,
yeah, true.
and so, and I'll say, for me, I'm not looking for someone to take care of me. I'm not looking for someone to improve my financial status. Not that I'm, have all the wealth that anyone could want, but I mean, I'm comfortable. I work hard. I take care of myself. So that's not my motivation at all. I'm not
Right,
looking for
right.
someone to take care of me. And so I think, you do have to have those conversations at this point in our life
Mhm.
too, because again, it's all around, the conditions of marriage and all. Because if there's a man and he's got adult children and he's got his own, financial wealth or security, I don't need that. If you want that to go to your children and your grandchildren, I'm good with
Absolutely.
that. Just like
Absolutely.
whatever I have, I want it to go to my daughter and my grandchildren, and so
Right.
again, I think when you get into marriage too, it's like, mixing money and finances and, there's so many aspects to it at this part
Yes.
that, like, I talk to my daughter about it all the time. Like if something were to happen to me, carrying out my final wishes and, I mean, I fully trust her to do that. Would I trust that?
Yeah.
There's so many other things to consider at this point in my life that I didn't consider when I got married when I was 24, because I was
Absolutely.
young.
Yes.
I had no children. I wasn't thinking
Hmm.
about end of life issues. We didn't have any money, so whatever money we had, it was like we neither
Right.
one of us had it, so we were both working towards goals. So it's very different now. I think all of those other factors are things to think about and to consider,
Yeah.
and so I don't know, maybe there are women or men that feel differently about it, but I just feel like, what I honestly want is just companionship, friendship. I don't need your money. I don't need you to take care of me. I don't need you to buy me a house. I don't need you to buy me a car. I don't need any of that. I just literally want somebody that I can enjoy being with. I like to travel. I like to go to dinner. That's what I'm looking for.
Hmm. Companionship.
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 Companionship. That's it.
Some say that we might be trying to take the easy way out. I say we're trying to take the realistic way out. It's got to be realistic at this point in our lives.
And
It's
I'm
got to
like,
fit.
and why not? I mean, the easy way out to me is I think I think I've earned a stress-free life at this point. It's not like
Absolutely.
I'm taking the easy way out, but it's like, tomorrow is not promised. And it's just like if I can envision this life that for me feels like it would be stress free, I could enjoy someone, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I don't feel like I have to apologize for wanting that for myself at this point in my life,
I
because
totally
again,
agree with that
yeah,
100%. And in addition, I would like for you to tell me how do you imagine your life to be at this point in your life? Because this is what excites me. What excites you? And if we could
right,
talk about that, because I think if there could be a meeting of the minds, because I think that's the key. I really, really do. If we look at things realistically for the stage of life that we're in, and I want to be happy, I want to be without as much stress as possible, as you said,
exactly,
and I want that for you too.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And so it's like, because I know, like, I don't know, there's so many things, like, I just think of, when I got married, and just at the point there's so many things that are happening in your life. You're learning how to adult. So you're adult to be an adult. So you're adulting, family, careers. I mean, there are a lot of stressors on any marriage
yes,
when you get married, when you're young, because you are trying to build your life. And I think, depending on how you both are able to handle that, manage that, the communications, having the same goals. I mean, all that's important. And if that doesn't happen, then I think that does cause stress and a breakdown in the marriage and the
yeah,
relationship.
yeah,
And so I think at this point, I feel like I'm past all that.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
my child is grown. It's biologically impossible for me to have any more children. So that's not what I'm doing. I'm in my career, I'm looking, at when am I going to retire, not trying to build a career. So I'm at a very different place. And I
Hmm.
do really want a stress-free, easy relationship.
Yeah,
I really
yes.
do. I want it to be easy and happy, and not full of tension and strife. It's like because if I'm going to go into that, it's almost one of those things. I'll do better by myself.
Right.
Why would I?
Okay, so let's do this. We have to bring this part of the conversation to a close. We need to get some men in here around our age to give us their perspective.
I
But
agree.
here's what I'm thinking about. I have this question written here and I'm grappling with it. As you were talking, I was thinking about it. What do mature women need? And based on our conversations, I would say companionship and easy. What would you say? Would you add to that list?
I'd say, I mean, I want to feel valued,
Valued.
appreciated, loved,
Mm-hmm.
cared for, but not in the way that I need you to buy me things, but I need you to care about me as a person,
Yeah,
care about my
absolutely.
feelings, care about my thoughts, my opinions, my perspective. So I need to be cared for, but maybe not in the way that people typically think about it. So I think just being valued, appreciated
Just being
for,
valued to care for
yeah,
you, the person,
exactly.
not taken care of. That's not the kind of care we're talking about. Those things are nice. That's like icing on the cake. But what we need is to be loved, cared for, and valued.
Yep.
And there's something about women, we love to give that back. It's almost automatic. If we get it, we want to give it. That's something in us that automatically does that. if we are denied that, it's difficult to give that. So
Yeah.
that's what we have come up with for this part of the conversation. And this has got to continue because I want to see what some other folks think. But we're going to bring this part of the conversation to a close. Kim, I really thank you for joining me on this podcast and all that we share on and off the screen. You have been a friend and a sister, and I love you and I thank you. This is Get Real with Alexis, and we'll see you next time.